So this was a period of time that was an energy shock too. And I think Richard Nixon should have fixed the price of corn and soybeans only in order to stabilize the foundations of the economy. If he could have fixed the price of corn and soybeans in the farm sector of the economy, then productive farmers wouldn't have been going belly up with even more disruption of the foundations of the economy. So this was a period of time of crisis, okay, by the business cycle because of energy shock. But there was also a previous energy shock in 1929. But if you actually have an organic grain certificate and you have a Fed, I mean, Milton Friedman didn't think a Fed was necessary, that you'd only need a slightly increasing money supply. But, and you might not need a Fed. But I think you might need a Fed, but with an organic grain certificate, but you don't want them unregulated, and you definitely don't want them unsupervised. The idea is that you really need the fat, lazy bankers being supervised by the farmers, and including the Fed. Basic money theory is such that where is interest rate supposed to be, where's the money supply supposed to be, how much money do you have in the system printed, you know, where's inflation rate supposed to be, where's the fractional reserve rate for the bankers supposed to be. And at the basic levels of money theory, it's all the same, wherever the farmers need it to be. They put the basic confidence in the money supply. Now, the second order and third order of the equations would be the confidence, for the basic confidence in the money supply, would be the confidence in the liquid fuel markets for transportation and the electrical energy confidence, you know, in the grid, so that you have the basic energies for comfortable survival, you know. If you can't exchange the money that you earn in your paycheck for the different energy forms you need, then the money's not worth as much. So it's having these energy forms in abundance that's, you know, in the best interest of the government, because that controls what the rest of the economy can, you know, get done, get paid for, and get taxed on. So it's your energy in the system that's really the critical, you know, factor in what kind of tax revenues the government can get. But so there's two basic concepts that I don't think are in the economics books. One's the basic law of production and consumption, right? And that law is such that it holds at the micro level, micro level, at the individual level, or at the macro level. And it's like, if you produce more than you consume, you're going to get richer. If you consume more than you produce, you're going to get poorer. Now, you have productions for the military that basically get thrown away. It's actually, you're throwing away valuation of your currency, you know, the sweat of the people and stuff like that. When you're throwing bullets and bombs and missiles around, you're throwing production away, okay? So increasing military spending isn't really going to help the economy. What we need, you know, you can't really balance production and consumption, you know, individual to individual or state to state, you know, government to government throughout the global economy. Some countries are going to be producing more than they consume, and, you know, they're going to get richer. Some countries will be you know, consuming more than they produce, and they get poorer. And in order to shift that around, you need productions in your economy that result in an increase in the wealth of the nation, right, that you don't want to consume. Okay. So his book, The Wealth of Nations, I think he had it wrong. I think the basic wealth of the nation is a stable currency, and if it's going to be an organic grain certificate, then the basic wealth of the nation is having the soil fertility in a high state of perfection and having a minimal erosion, you know, of the soils. All of our lives are connected back to the soil. Give me a minute. So what I think we want to do is set up the safety nets where the money doesn't go into Washington, D.C. We want to set up the taxes so that a lot of the money doesn't go to Washington, D.C. So this is a very anti-federalist position. But if you set up what I call Robin Hood economics for the safety net for the unemployed, you're not really giving them the money. It's not steal from the rich and give to the poor. Robin Hood never gave any money to the poor in Sherwood Forest. He spread some money around outside of Sherwood Forest so he'd have decent intel on what the sheriff was going to do next, and he'd have, you know, some knowledge of when the deep pockets were coming through the forest so he could keep Prince John poor. So, you know, so that he could keep his little guy safe. I mean, it's all about keeping pawns safe. And keeping the other guy poor, you can keep your pawn safe. So this concept, you know, what you have for Sherwood Forest in the future as the focal point of the safety nets for disabled people and unemployed people, where they're producing some kind of positive effect for the support they're getting, where they're working, you know. And in Sherwood Forest, I mean, Robin Hood was allowed to, you know, project a nice guy image. It was the grannies in the Sherwood Forest who was putting the boot up, the lazy butt. They all had to do something to benefit the community in Sherwood Forest. And I think a safety net system can be based on that, as long as you don't let the money make it to Washington, D.C. It's not necessarily a negative income tax where you're just giving money away. You're trying to expand job skill base, and you're trying to increase the dignity that the poor have, you know, by doing something that will enhance soil fertility and stuff like that. So if the farmers are the ones that are putting the basic confidence in the money supply, the first commandment for governments and for economic systems is thou shalt not steal from the farmers. But I think if you want to try and keep the fertilizer money in the county, it's okay to steal for the farmers. So my grandfather's philosophy in farming had two basic considerations. You know, he said that, you know, if you wanted to be a farmer, you had to learn how to take shit off of everybody, but you didn't have to let them throw it in your face or bring it into the parlor. Just get them to put it on the pasture. Well, he didn't know about methane digester technology, which can knock out the weed seeds and the bug eggs from organic matter from the city folks. So, I mean, he would probably agree with getting the, you know, the shit off of everybody, but getting it closer to the methane digester to process it for this herbicide and insecticide effect, but amend it with the proper chemicals so that it would be a very good seed starter for corn. So, and his other philosophy was, if you feed the worms, they'll feed us. So he was always trying to get something back. He was trying to get his goods, as he ran a dairy on shares. I mean, he was a sharecropper basically, but he ran a dairy on shares. And he was always trying to bring something back to feed the worms. He'd, you know, try and get the food to the dinner plate of the guy who was going to eat it, and then he was trying to get something back. So he's hauling both ways. But so his philosophy was pretty simple. So I covered Richard Nixon and the, you know, fixing the price of corn and soybeans to stabilize the foundations of the economy. And then Jefferson, a Little Debbie rebellion. It's like the Little Debbies might disappear with Norquist in the game. He can get us into global wars and you know, this tax reform. I mean, keeping the taxes out of Washington, D.C. Means you have to localize Social Security. You have to localize the medical programs, okay? And then you would have to localize the state and federal IRS function, and then you set up Sherwood Forest with, you know, some funding from the farmers for the organic carbonaceous materials they need for the methane digesters, but you set up a power plant next door to an ethanol plant so that they can add value to their basic farm commodities.